So there is a lot that goes into a good, complete discernment process. And the Bible and Christian tradition contain tons of wisdom on doing this well. But I want to start in this video by just explaining the practical heart of the Next Steps Discernment Process. So in the full Next Steps process, this is actually stage 3 of 5. But I think a lot of churches actually will start here, and for some churches, this will be all they do. So at this point, your council has come to some conclusions. You've wrestled, for instance, with the relevant biblical teaching. You've heard the questions and concerns of the congregation. You've been prayerfully seeking God's will as a council, maybe also as a congregation. But now you sense that, to the best of your judgment, this is the best way forward. This is God's desire for your church. So this is the pastor we're going to call, or this is the building project we're going to pursue, or this is the decision we're recommending for some contentious issue facing our group. Now, once you're at that point, which for some churches and some decisions takes a long time, and for some will be fairly quick, you have a choice to make about how you will present your decision to the congregation. A congregation which, if you're like most churches dealing with most issues, you're going to have at least some people who either disagree with the council's decision or who at least have some sincere questions or concerns. So we go back to the grace and truth paradigm that often we reference in the Next Steps process. So, having finally made this decision, you could lean into a kind of grace side, into your maybe pastoral identity. Maybe you know that this decision won't be popular, that it could cause some waves, some friction in relationships, and so you quietly file the decision away in the back of the council binder. You pat yourself on the back for discerning God's truth, but no one has to know, and no relationships have to be strained, and so you kind of soft pedal your decision. That's one option. Or maybe you lean into the truth side, into your prophetic identity. You tell everyone the results of your discernment and you say, hey, people, this is God's truth. This is where we stand. We can do no other. And you can love it or leave it. You can accept it or you can find a new church. Okay, I'm exaggerating, of course, but not that much. You can see the problem, right? This happens to a lot of councils. If you focus too much on the pastoral side, you can muddy the truth. But if you focus too much on the truth side, you can undermine grace. I want to propose to you a third way. A way that encourages you to be both prophetic and pastoral without, I think, sacrificing either. So first, you got to actually write down the fruit of your discernment and the basic process you took to get there. What has God made clear to you? How did God make it clear? How did you arrive at what we call your scenario for the future? What you're writing down, this scenario, it really could be as simple as a letter to the congregation, or I guess something a little bigger and more detailed. Whatever it is, you've written it down. You explain what you've decided, and you explain how you've decided. Second, you share it. You share it with the congregation. But at the same time you share it, we encourage you to invite folks to sign up for what we call a listening circle. A listening circle is basically a one-off small group meeting, but it's more structured. We train your leaders to do this. Basically, there's a trained facilitator and a recorder taking notes, and then 5 to 6 other members of the church. So there's 7 or 8 altogether, and you literally sit in a circle, You pray together, you read scripture together, you name some ground rules, you ask a series of questions. All the prayers and scriptures and ground rules and questions, they're all scripted ahead of time. We give you that. The first question you'll ask is, what's one thing you affirm about council's letter? Now, you ask this question because you're hoping that God provides a kind of confirming witness to your discernment. The next question, what's one thing you resist in the council's letter? You ask this one because you know that you're fallible and there might be something you're missing or something you just misunderstood. Third, what's the hardest part for you? And you ask this one because any anxious discernment or contentious decision strains relationships and community, and it's good to just mourn with those who mourn. This could be hard for a lot of people. All right, the next question, the fourth question. What questions do you have? You ask this one because it turns out that we are not always as clear and thorough as we think we are. Fifth, what do you wish to share with the council to help their discernment in this season? You ask this because God has given wisdom and insight, even to people outside of the council. And while council, of course, does not need to agree, we also dare not say, we don't need you, to other voices in the congregation. Sixth, if you disagree with the decision of council, what do you need to stay engaged or connected to the church? I think this is a really important question. We ask it because not every disagreement requires that we separate. Sometimes it does. But sometimes what a dissenter needs in order to stay engaged in the church is something the church is happy to provide. So for the human sexuality type discussions, maybe a dissenter would say, I'm uneasy with this traditional position. I'm afraid you're just using it to draw a line and say, those are the bad people and we are the good people. And I fear that it's never going to stop. I fear that the lines are only going to get tighter and tighter. But if I knew that our church was really committed to loving and enfolding and discipling LGBT folks, I could stick around. Now, I think most CRC councils would say, oh yeah, we'd happily do that. This isn't about bright lines of good and bad people. This is about pastoral care and discipleship. And that's the point. When you ask, what do you need to stay engaged? You don't have to guess how people will respond or what they need. You don't have to assume people are going to leave. Now, of course, if they ask for something the council cannot or won't provide, at least you can be honest about that. And now the council knows what's at stake. So, you ask the questions. Then responses to these questions they're written down, they're collected. You kind of scrub them to make them anonymous, and then you share them back with the congregation and the council. The council then goes back to their decision. Maybe they rewrite it, maybe they expand it, maybe they tweak it, maybe they just leave it alone. Once all that feedback from the circles has been considered, the council shares their final decision with the church. Some churches might say, you know what, that was so helpful the first time, we're going to do another set of circles for more engagement. But they might not. And that's basically it. That's the heart of the process. It really doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to take months of time. But if you do this, even just this, I think you'll have done something good. You will have managed to hold to your convictions, right? Because through your scenario, you say clearly, this is where we stand. And yet, in compassion, you listen to those who may disagree. You've dealt with dissenters graciously. You took their concerns seriously. But while being gracious, you've not compromised the truth or suggested a false equivalency. If this process sounds interesting to you or you think it could be helpful for your church, contact us at discern@crcna.org or learn more at crcna.org/pcr/nextsteps.